Fantastic. There's Bill.
Hey, hey.
Good afternoon. Thank you so
Good
much for coming back and joining us again here.
Yeah, this is fun.
Oh my gosh. Lots of fun. Wrong fit. Yeah, wrong. Async awake. Yes, that was the wrong display. And hey, Myra's here in the chat room. Terrific. So we've gone through and we've covered a number of things today to get folks in and running with a couple different topics. We just covered a little bit about static methods, link. We touched briefly on funcs. We didn't get into actions, but we've gone through a bunch of different topics here. Now, we wanted to talk about some of the newer features we did in C# with C# 6, and you've got a great topic, it looks like, here on string interpolation, right?
Right. So there's a few different things I want to get people to think about, both for beginning C# developers and for some experienced developers. You know, we all program by Stack Overflow. We try to find answers and we look and we search for, how should I do this? And we'll see answers. And one of the things that's a challenge for us, as well as for the community, is practices that we used from early on have got, 10, 15 years of upvotes in a site like Stack Overflow, or links and search engine juice that this is the way you should solve a problem. And with these newer features that have been added to the language recently, they've only got 2 or 3 years of upvotes. So whether it's people learning the language and they're learning, some of the hard things that we did in more convoluted ways, a decade ago, or people who already have those habits ingrained, what I want to spend the next hour doing is really looking at some of the things that have been added to the language that can make you more productive. There a lot of them are smaller features, but they just make code more concise, more readable, and easier to write code that doesn't have lingering errors somewhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I apologize. I didn't introduce you properly first. So, gosh, Bill, you're one of the leads on the documentation here for C# at docs.microsoft.com.
So I own most of the C# docs. Our team, I really like our team with Myra, who's in the chat room, Ron, and John Alexander, and Cam. We move around quite a bit across different areas of .NET. If there's a focus, I have a focus on C#, Ron on VB, Myra on pretty much everything else. She does a lot. And, John does machine learning and so on. So we're bringing that in. But we all kind of help each other out and look at a lot of different areas as well.
Very cool. Well, and thank you again for joining us. Now, you sent me over a link to check out here to start some of this discussion of some of these new features. So let me go over to the code.
So a lot of what I wanted to do is I loaded up, we'll get to this a little later, I loaded up your StreamTools.
Oh,
solution.
Yes.
And we can walk through that and look at some of the new areas there. But what I did notice when I was doing an informal code review looking for some of these features is you're already using string interpolation all over the place. So I couldn't find a good place to put a PR in. So what I want to do is Ron wrote a great tutorial using the try.net service that Maria talked about earlier this morning.
Oh, yeah.
I want to walk through especially the second, third, and fourth pages on this.
Okay.
So the first one I think people would have already seen this morning, where we talked about just the idea, and it's probably worth doing again, is if you just want to copy and paste those first 2 lines from that first sample on creating an interpolated string.
All right, so let's click begin here and go into this. Brave Cobra is asking, are you also responsible for the docs of Q&A Maker? No, I don't think Bill has Q&A Maker. We had some problems with the Q&A Maker docs on yesterday, and I've been in touch with those folks to help improve their docs. They don't have the cool GitHub integration like we do for the Microsoft docs.
We're trying.
Oh yeah. All right, so I've got the first couple lines here for create an interpolated string. I'll copy and paste that in here.
Mm-hmm. And now what we're seeing here, and this I know Sarah talked about a little bit as well, is inside these curly braces, we can put any valid C# expression. Okay? And there are 2 tricks that are going on among this. One is whatever's there gets replaced, and then since everything because it inherits from object, has a toString method, it doesn't matter if what's in that expression evaluates to a string or to some other type. So what we can start with is just this hello name, it's a pleasure to meet you. And what we're doing there, and what the compiler does, is it takes that variable expression name, substitutes its value, which is name in angle brackets, if you just did the straight copy. And when you run that, that's what you're going to get.
Right, so I've swapped it out and put, of course, Jeff in there because I wanted to say hello to me. And if I click run, it outputs exactly what I'd expect. It took Jeff and swapped out name, and there's my output.
Okay,
Makes sense.
Now, exactly. Now we've seen that. Now the first thing, and why I really want everybody to get in the habit of using this, and what you'll see all over code examples predating C#6 is inside those angle bracket or those curly braces, we'd have ordinal numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then after that format string, there'd be a comma and then any number of expressions that get substituted in the right order.
Yeah.
That's easy to get wrong.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's how we've been doing strings since the C language in the 1950s. And that's where this new syntax is a lot more clear. It's a lot easier to read. You can see exactly what expression gets substituted. You can't be off by one and it's the wrong output here or there because you're putting the variables right where you want them in the string. So that's why we really like this. Now head on to the next page. And this is where we start to get some really worthwhile things that string interpolation gives us.
Okay, so different data types.
Right. So here we've got this vegetable class.
I don't like vegetables.
It's okay. And it's got a name. It's got a toString value that returns its name. So, and then we have an enum for different kinds of units. For you buy them by how many of them you have, by the pound, by the ounce, by the dozen, what have you. And you can see we can set some variables here, and then this interpolated string at the end prints out this message and converts all these types, right? So on a certain date, the price of whatever kind of item it was, our eggplant here, was $1.99 per item. Okay, so let's run this, and then let's explain exactly what the compiler's doing here to make it much easier to print strings out.
Oh, wait a sec. I was having a problem with this earlier. It's not letting me delete that. Once I run, it's not letting me modify the content of the editor.
That is not good.
All right, so I'll click run now. So now I get on 4/20/2018, right? So that's not now. It's the 18th.
What time are you getting?
I'm getting on April 20th, 2018. So the price of eggplant was $1.99.
I wonder what's going on with your container. That's when we'd have to ask Maria why her container thinks it's last month.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's several different things going on. First, let's look at date. So you see that date time thing is a rather long string.
Yeah.
And that's the default conversion from date time to a string.
The default format of it.
The default format.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what its toString method returns. And if you look at our class definition for vegetable up above, you can see that item, which is a vegetable, its toString method returns the name. So that's why we're getting the name in that place.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then we have the default for the price. And for the unit is an enum, right? So it can be item, pound, ounce, or dozen.
Okay.
Now, this is one of these things. Enums really are a thin wrapper around some numeric type, in this case, an integer.
Right.
So item actually is 0, pound is 1, ounce is 2, dozen is 3.
Right. By default, they count up from 0.
Right. And here, because enum has a toString that replaces the numeric value with the string text of what constant it is for that enum value, which is why you get per item there.
Okay.
Right. So the compiler is doing some of that work for us, which makes that just a little bit easier.
All right. I can buy that.
Okay. Now, on the next one, you'll see how we're going to change some of this. And this is where string interpolation, where a lot of people don't seem to see these examples as much. So it would be really good for beginners, especially, to go through this tutorial online or on their own machine. And these last 3 pages are where we really get to some of the features that make this a really useful feature in the language. So if you look at this one line, and we can just edit this instead of copying and pasting.
Well, let me paste in again here.
Okay.
What I had, and then I had to reload in order to get this to work. So now let me copy. So on date D, price C2. So that's a little bit different.
So now what we're doing here is, after that colon, what we now have is a format string. So we're saying the format string for date time, the single lowercase d, is going to print just the date.
All right.
And the format string for a decimal number, C2, that says print this with two numbers after the decimal point.
All right, hang on. I need to reload this. One second.
Okay.
And all right, so let me paste that in. Oh, of course, it's got the previous sample. Copy that. Yeah, it's not letting me cursor around in here. Come on. Okay, so there's that. Copy this. Paste that. There it goes. All right. So you were saying date D. D is a format string telling it how to format.
So anything after the colon is your format string.
Okay. And so C2, you were saying, is 2 digits after the decimal point.
Right. So dollars and cents in the U.S. money system.
Okay. So, right, this 199M says this is a decimal number here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so if I run that now, so now I've got a little funny character there, but it looks like it's formatted properly.
Good.
And it truncated off all the time nonsense that was next to it.
Right. Okay, so we can put those format strings directly in the expression with a colon separating whatever it is we want to print with the format specifier and how we want to do it.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's head to the next page.
All right, I'm just going to copy this source code real quick so that
the next one's all new source code.
Oh, it is? Oh, good. Okay.
It is. So we're okay.
All right, so I've navigated to the next page, and I'm going to do a refresh just so I can get a fresh editor here. There we go. All right. So what are we doing here?
Now here we're showing, in addition to format strings, which is specific to each type, will have its own different format strings as to how it wants to be formatted. Here we're trying to get some things like to make a markdown table or something of that nature. So what we're going to do is we're going to print these items and their quantities, and we're going to print them in fixed width fields. So we separate it by a comma.
Okay.
And then if you look at, for item, it's minus 25. So if I remember right, that is left alignment. And then 10 is right alignment. I may have that backwards. Let's run it and see, because I always forget these.
I'll copy that code and paste it in here. Run. Okay. So item, and it's left aligned, and it's allocated 25 spaces for this column. And then quantity, because it doesn't have the negative, is right aligned.
Right. And now if you want, if you can slide up there, we can just edit those. And if you just swap the negative and the positive signs, then you can see how that changes how that table is aligned.
It's not let me reload and repaste it in there. Okay. So if I delete that and put it over here, same thing down here, and rerun, and now they're aligned the opposite way.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so now for anything we're trying to print, the different features we've learned now is you can put any C# expression inside those curly braces. It's going to get evaluated and printed. You have a colon, and after that, that's a format string specific to that type as to how it's going to be interpreted and how it's going to convert into a string. And then with a comma, we can specify any width for any of the types that we have.
Okay.
At the very bottom on this, you're going to see there's some that use a little bit of both of them. They've got the date, time,
Oh,
and days, and hours.
All right, let me copy that and try that in the editor here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is saying console write line date time now. All right, so find the date, 20 spaces wide, but the negative says left align it, and then colon D, so it's saying format it as a short
just the
date.
date.
Okay.
Short date, yes.
And then same thing for the hour, except we're grabbing just the hours in, I think, isn't capital H, isn't that like 24-hour
I think
format?
that's 24-hour format time.
Cool. I can't believe I remembered that. And then the N. So this is a decimal. So we're allocating 15 spaces. And then we're saying format it with, what's the N2? Is that saying 2 decimal places?
N is, the 2 is the number of decimal places. N is to format it as a number, so not scientific notation with the E or any of those.
Okay. So I'll run that. Makes sense. Okay, I get that. Now, Userman asks a good question. Is there a center formatting?
I don't believe there is a center formatting. I would have to look that one up.
Okay. But that's interesting that you can do `20 in Python and you'll get it centered.
Okay.
If it's not there, I think that sounds like a good suggestion to add in there.
That would be an interesting one to add.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of stuff that we can do with string interpolation very quickly to lay out data, in the console nicely. Just call me add asks, what about SQL injection? That's an interesting problem, right?
I don't. Okay, yeah. So this is a bit of a digression. The short version is you could do it with or without this feature the same way.
Right. And
so, the longer version is if you're taking input from a user or from some other external source, you should certainly look at it and see what you're doing. And I would never use this feature to just create a SQL string I'm sending to a database. Yeah. I use the parameter substitution and all those things that help protect us against SQL injection.
The newer versions of Entity Framework Core are trying to protect against this. They're trying to make it smart and say, hey, don't do this. But I definitely recommend, like Bill's saying, use a command object if you want to do that type of approach.
Right.
So.
And where this I find really useful is whether it's logging messages, writing format out to web pages or to consoles or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
This is one that I also didn't find a good example in your StreamTools, but this same interpolated string syntax works in MVC pages and Razor pages.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a number of places in the StreamTools that I do logging out to the console. Right. We could take advantage of this approach over there if we wanted.
And I noticed you mostly did, which is why I went to our
well, I didn't do any of the formatting like you've done here with the spacing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So that would be the one.
Okay.
We can add some of those.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the next one, I'm going to get you a live share link.
All right.
Now I've got your...
You've got my code.
I've got your code.
I'm afraid.
Live share is currently in the auto connection. What does that mean?
It's has to do with the firewall.
There we go. Oh.
Brave Cobra asks, are those actual spaces in the output? Yes, I believe those are. All right.
There we go. Invite link copy to the clipboard. Groovy.
All right. And we've been doing a lot of live share today. I hope everybody is seeing that's been watching and following along with us just how valuable this is to be able to communicate and share code without having to spend a lot of time passing things back and forth between GitHub to be able to see what each other's working on and comment and collaborate together.
I hate Skype again. Skype moved where I
Move
find
the chat window.
chat window. Yes, every time I load Skype on a new machine. There you go. So now you should have the link.
So sorry to barge in. If I want to truly follow, I just need to use GitHub to get everything. There, some of our sample code that we've shared is on GitHub, and you can. We will, of course, have this video available for folks later today if you want to. Later today, after we're done, if you want to come and follow along.
And then I will send you a pull request, Jeff, that has a link to the string interpolation tutorial we just did.
Okay.
Source code for that, if people want to try it on their own machine. And I'm going to get you a PR from the changes we make to your StreamTools, and I'll send a link to that PR as well.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Conscious beauty. Well, let's go back up to Sushinator. For the formatting, the question was, can we change that to tabs from spaces in our string interpolation?
No, that's going to come out of spaces.
Yeah. And let's see, SQL injection, to repeat that, we recommend not using string interpolation like this with SQL statements. Entity Framework Core is trying to protect you from that, but we recommend you using a command object with parameters if you're using ADO.NET, right? If you're using those database objects directly. If you are using something like Entity Framework, you should be a little bit more protected on that.
Right. Now, and here I would use, you could use string interpolation to build parameters, but I would not use it to build the SQL logic.
Yes, good point. All right.
Okay.
So let me just introduce the project, right? This is some of the code that we work on during my normal stream that we work on here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And this is actually generating, it's an ASP.NET. It's a web project that generates two of the widgets that you see here on screen. Up at the top, this architecture workshop goal here. So when we hit 2,000 followers, we're going to host an architecture workshop. And we're getting close to it. We're getting real close. And right above Bill's head there, you see the number of followers, the number of viewers right now on Twitch. So 146 folks are watching right now. But we're going to do something to clean up some of this code and take advantage of some of these new features in C#. All right, let's take a look.
All right, so the one I wanted to look at is if you go to where I am at in your code.
Yep, I see you there on display helper. Okay.
Okay, so this is a good example to use the null coalescing operator, or it's called the Elvis operator.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No.
So here, I'll let you explain the code a little bit, but what we're trying to do is set this gradient blend. So I'm going to let you explain what's going on.
Yeah, so in that architecture workshop bar that you see up at the top, we're creating a gradient, right? We've actually received parameters with 3 colors, right? Red, an orange, and a green. And I want to format the CSS blend property appropriately, taking into account those 3 colors. Now, here's the thing: the feature inside of the project here will actually accept any number of colors, right? So I can have it blend through a whole bunch of different things, but I thought 3 was pretty good for what I'm displaying here. So when this method is called to display that workshop, it actually is receiving just, red, orange, and green, but I need to format that with, appropriate distance for how wide it is, and whether I'm blending appropriately or if I have a hard stop between those. So I've got a width of this bar, I've got how I'm doing that fade from one color to the next, and the number of colors that I'm using in those colors. So that's what I'm passing in to this method. And there's a lot of work going on in here.
There is. Now here's a few of the things that we're going to do. Now this is where I think the Elvis operator gets really interesting. It can generate code that gets a little bit harder to read.
Okay.
But at times it will generate code that's somewhat simpler to test. Okay. So there's a computer science term that I don't know I know you didn't hear this morning, but something called cyclomatic complexity.
No, we did not touch on that.
Okay. So I'm not going to give a very strict definition, but effectively let's think of any method that you're trying to test. Okay. If it's all just statements and there are no ifs or switches or loops, there is one path through that code, right? Do this, do this, do this, do this, and it's done. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Methods like that are pretty easy to test because there is one path through them.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, cyclomatic complexity starts to measure how many if statements do you have, how many things are you testing in those if statements, how many loops do you have, and on what conditions. So how many paths are there through this code?
Oh, wow.
And the more paths you have,
sure,
the more complicated it is to test.
Okay, so looking at this method, I right away on lines 24 and 26, I'm seeing two if statements. I've already got 3 different ways through the code.
Right. Now, in particular, where the Elvis operator helps is we often do tests around is something null. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
So where I'm concentrating here is around line 45, where we set the blend equal to 1. And then we have this, if BG blend doesn't equal null and its length is greater than C, set blend equal to this.
Okay. Now,
testing 2 conditions.
I'm going to smack my hand here because what is C? Let's back up.
That is just an index. So it's just a count starting from a certain number and moving back as to how far how many levels of gradation you have.
Okay.
So let's take just this one thing and let's try to make it simpler by removing the number of paths.
Okay. Sure.
So let's get rid of this null check. Okay.
Oh, man. Okay.
Now that sounds like that might be bad.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to then say, well, we'll say question mark dot length. Okay.
Now, BG blend is, right, that is a collection. It's an array of doubles.
Right.
All right, so it's an array of numbers.
So if BG blend is null, that question mark dot short circuits and it just returns 0.
Okay.
So that will return either 0 or the length of the array if BG blend is not null.
Okay.
And now I'm going to do the same thing inside here because since I didn't check for null, I'm now going to say question mark dot C. Okay.
Didn't pick up the period.
I shouldn't need the period there. I should just be able to do it with the question mark. There we go. Array access should work. There we go. Question mark dot C. Sorry. All right. And now I need one other thing because you're setting the blend to 1. And this BG blend question mark dot C is going to return 0 if it's null.
Okay.
So now I'm also going to use the null coalescing operator and say if that returns nothing, then make it a 1. Okay. So now I've simplified this a little bit.
A lot of bit. Now I've got a little red squiggle above that angle bracket. Yeah, around that square bracket.
I'm wondering what. I may have to look this one up. No, yeah, it should be just the question mark. I don't need question mark dot. It should be BG blend question mark open bracket. Okay, so the array access, it's a variation of that same null conditional operator.
Okay.
And it doesn't use the period, question mark, and then the open brace.
Gotcha.
Okay. So now we get that, and if it returns null, we give it the 1.
Okay.
Okay, now I'd like to get rid of that other if, and that one starts to get a little bit scary and a little bit cranky, but we could do it.
Now, so Tian Isla, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly in the chat room, is saying, well, what is that .c? So normally you can access that indexer, right? Because that's a collection. BG blend is. It's an array. So your C is a counter stepping through here. So what we're doing is we're accessing that item in the array, but by putting the question mark there, we're actually making sure that it's not null here and jumping through. Thanks for the link, Space Shot. Yes, thank you for adding that documentation link. I wonder who wrote that.
That might be before my time. I don't think I wrote that one. But okay, so there's the one change.
Okay.
And now to get rid of the length check, it gets a little bit scary and hairy because what you have to do then is I have to check the length. So then that one I may leave out for right now because it starts to make the code a bit unreadable.
Yeah.
Because you end up with like a null conditional and another null, and it starts to look weird. So I'm going to leave that one where it is because I think that's the best way to read it.
Okay.
The other big Elvis operator one I want to do is, if you look where I'm at now, I just moved over into fake service.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have services that we connect to. Twitch, you see I'm getting data from. So in order for us to be able to test, I created a fake one that would just automatically increment the number of followers and viewers on some scheduled basis.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you go down toward the bottom, we have this stop async method, which is where you're releasing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? And
oh. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're checking for null again, and we're doing all that kind of stuff and seeing if it's really there and so on. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now here, this is sort of the classic use of the Elvis operator. I'm just going to put question marks before the dots in both of those if it's not equal to null.
And then you can get rid of the ifs.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And right, we just eliminated a half dozen lines of code.
Right. And now it's exactly clear as to what you want.
And I love the term Elvis operator because the question mark with the period next to it looks like two eyes with the little curlicue hair that Elvis had.
That's right. Okay, so now in this instance, we know update viewers implements iDisposable, so we don't have to do an extra check. But if you're ever trying to release something and if you're not sure it was disposable, like something got handed to you through dependency injection or something like that, and you don't know if you need to dispose it.
Right, it's some object type that I'm unsure of.
We can do something like this.
Oh, I didn't talk about the as keyword here.
So now, this is a nice trick if you don't know if something is supposed to be disposable.
Okay.
So now if I do update viewers as iDisposable.
So the as keyword is going to try to change that type to iDisposable, to that interface
Correct.
object. And if it isn't able to cast it, it'll return null.
Right. And if it returns null, then we don't call dispose. Okay. So if either update viewers is null or if update viewers is some type that does not implement iDisposable, that expression returns null and you don't call dispose.
Okay. Okay, that's a neat trick.
So that's one of the things that I really like to do with that operator.
Oh, yeah.
It just makes some things simpler and tighter, and it simplifies that checking for null, right? And, this was one of the things that I think Steve talked about a bit, the idea of guard clauses, and you start step laddering in, and eventually here's the code that works, and then we have all the ifs that go out. A lot of those, when they're null checks, this operator can make a lot more simple, a lot easier to understand, and a lot more clear in the code that you're writing.
Yes, absolutely. Much more clear. Uh-oh, and Sushinator is saying that the boss is lurking around. Is he? I don't see him here in the chat room yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's way at the end of the day today. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Userman is actually... This is actually a great comment from Userman because it's the longer format of what you just showed us. You can also do if X is disposable, is iDisposable, dispose. That feels a little bit longer, but it does the same thing.
It does. But then, yeah.
So the is keyword, let me write the is keyword just to highlight that is just a test to see if something can be converted to a type.
Yes, it does one other thing, is that if that variable is null, is will always return false.
Oh, okay.
So even if the type is iDisposable, if its value is null, is will return false.
Makes sense. Okay, got it.
Yep.
All right, so Elvis operator, real easy to use, and I love the trick of using it with the dispose. So that I know, okay, it's here, get rid of it if it is still here, right?
Yep. And then the other reason I specifically looked at the display helper is that a lot of people don't realize that there is also that variation on the index operator, the square bracket of question mark, then the square brackets.
Right here on 49. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's very terse notation, but I get why that works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the next one that I wanted to look at, if there are no other questions in the chat room on the Elvis operator.
No, I think we're good.
And this is one of my favorite refactorings, just to make things simple, is the idea of expression-bodied members.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something that I know I don't use enough of.
No, you
let me
don't.
click and follow. Oh.
So I'm going to be here in task extensions. Okay, you can see I'm right now on line 17 in task extensions.
Yep, I clicked and followed you. All right, so you're on the or timeout method.
Right.
So I feel like you're my C# conscience over my shoulder. Actually, over that shoulder, way up
And
in
this
that
is
corner.
just, I'm just going to start deleting stuff like mad here because this is just enough to drive me crazy. Okay, there we go. Now that's a whole lot simpler.
Okay. So the expression-bodied members, am I saying that right?
That's correct.
All right. What exactly is that feature, and why is it so much easier to do this?
Okay, so what expression-bodied members says is if we have a member that is one expression,
Okay.
so no more than one statement, if you will, or one expression, then we can use the fat arrow and then have that one expression. And we don't need the return statement. We just put the expression.
So we save a couple lines of code.
Right.
It's a little
Yep.
bit cleaner saying, okay, here's another syntax, but it's going to, in this case, right, we're doing the method overloading. And we're going to pass over and say, okay, use this with these default values.
And then I'm going to have you do the next one just so our viewers can see this. But if you go to line 31,
all right,
you should have a little icon. If you're in 15.7, you should have a little icon to the left.
Yep. All right, so I got a little screwdriver that pops up here with quick actions.
Open the quick actions, and one of them should be convert to expression-bodied member.
Use expression body for methods.
And
so if I click that, and it does that exact same refactoring.
Right.
Fat arrow over here with the or timeout.
Yep.
That makes sense.
And then there we go. Now you can look through that any place in your code. And, again, this is one of those things you can go nuts trying to make everything into an expression and do all kinds of crazy things. But it does the right sort of thing to make things kind of simple and puts them in place. So it just reads simpler than all that extra cruft of an open bracket, a closed bracket, a return statement in this when you're really just doing one thing. Okay.
So Space Shot says it's a little confusing and sometimes infuriating to experienced C# and Java devs. It's not simply syntactic sugar.
Yeah, it is. In this instance, it is.
Okay.
It does generate exactly the same IL as if you had the open bracket, the one statement, and a return.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, SQL Mr. Magoo is coming to my defense here, Bill, and saying that I have been using some things for readability sake.
Okay. And notice I didn't change your forget method up here where you do have it empty on purpose.
Yeah.
I could do the fat arrow semicolon, but I think that would be making it harder to get your design intent.
Okay.
When you wanted this to be empty and you wanted it to be there for a particular reason.
Yeah. In this case, really, where I have these methods as overloads, right? And really the true interaction and execution of this method is this, right, for the or timeout here, is this bit down here on line 34. It does make a lot more sense.
Yep. And here, this I do think is very, very stylistic. And I do think it depends on, and I'll play with it and sometimes take the quick action and look at it and go, that's not as clear as it was, and I'll revert it back.
Oh, yeah.
So it is definitely sort of what makes sense. There are times when we're trying to do a demo or something where I might put a whole lot of conditional operators and try to do something just to see that it's there. But I wouldn't write that in production code because that's hard to read.
Yeah.
So I would usually leave this, and we are going for readability, which back to the other person's comment that, yes, it is syntactic sugar. It's the same thing. So there's
Oh, yeah.
no performance benefits, one or the other. It's the same code. Go for what's readable.
Absolutely. There's, and this kind of goes back towards a little bit of what we're showing here, that coding is a team sport, right? It's become more and more of something where it's not just, I'm sitting here at my desk coding by myself, but I'm pair programming with somebody. Somebody's going to have to maintain this after we finish with it at some point. So
Right.
to be clear on our stuff makes everybody happier.
I would agree. And I think that's really what we're going for all the way through. So there were two other features that I was going to mention. One of
Okay.
them also you used quite a bit. So I just want to mention that it's there, and that is the Nameof feature.
Oh, yes, yes.
So if you do a quick find in files and just find any of those spots, because again, I saw this one like all over the place.
So let me search for name of. I don't have any name ofs.
I thought you did. I was pretty sure I found some.
It's nope, not finding any on my side.
Because I found some yesterday. Because I was looking to see where
I'm wondering if it didn't download the entire project to me when I'm trying to find over here.
That could be. Where I would find some was if you look in Fritz.bot in your chatbot.
Yeah.
Line 48.
See that it didn't download everything when I opened the Fritz chatbot folder here. It didn't show me that.
So if you go into where I'm at
right
there
now,
it is. Yep. Up. And here where I really like this, and this is where it's important for people, is what Nameof does is it just takes the name of any symbol in your program and replaces that symbol with its textual name. So here you're creating a logger, and the name is going to be the name of this class, your Fritz.bot.
And that makes a ton of sense, right? Because I'm not passing a magic string, right? If the name of this class changes, it'll break easily, right?
And actually it won't even break, and the tools know. So if you go up to line 42, and highlight Fritz.bot and just press F2 and make it Fritz.bot 2 or something for a moment.
It won't let me rename.
Well, I guess I will then. But if I go up here and if I hit F2 and I say this is now Fritz.bot 2.
Or it's Wagner bot.
There we go. And now if you notice, you should see every single one of those symbols, including in
that
the
name of
thing.
Right? Oh yeah. So and Magus is in the chat room is asking what I was going to ask as a follow-up question here. So I've done name of Fritz.bot. Well, what if I wanted to grab the property name on that?
So you want Fritz.bot dot something?
Dot something, right? Cooldown time is up here, right? If I wanted to put that property name of cooldown time that I see on line 32, right? Can I do just dot that property name?
You could.
And then
just like there. Now, what would get printed is cooldown time.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there, and then that leads to the final question of, is there a way for me to get the fully qualified property name, right? The class.
Not right now. No.
Okay.
No.
So it's whatever the last item is you're referencing is what will be added in.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Okay. And then now there's one last thing that I wanted to show. And for this one, what I want you to pull up is...
Here, I'm just going to click and follow you.
Yeah, you follow me. I'm right here.
Oh, yes. All right. I'm catching an exception here, right? So I didn't touch on try catch at all today, and that's shame on me. This is how we handle errors in .NET, right? In C#. So I catch a type of an exception, right? Those are our errors, and I'm catching this last one here at the end, which is the generic exception object.
Right. Now I'm going to see if I can find a slightly different spot for this kind of a catch of what I want to demonstrate. Let's look at... yeah, here's a good one. Let's go right here.
All right, so here we are in the Q&A command. So this is, for the folks that are in the chat room, when you ask a question that ends with a question mark, I actually bounce off of Azure Cognitive Services and try to answer from my FAQ your questions. But this is an exception right in the middle of my configuration, right? No, I'm sorry.
No, I think this one's in... This is in...
Oh, this is the actual query. This is where it's actually asking the question. It's bouncing off of Azure.
Okay, now, well, here what you're doing is you're taking the exception and you're logging something, and then you're eating the exception.
Right. I'm not actually raising that information.
Right. So you're not actually rethrowing it. But I want to show a technique here. So I'm going to just add a little bit of code that then before I send you the PR, I'm going to move this into the iLogger interface so you can use it in a lot of places.
Okay.
Let's just say right now I am going to write a private method. And I'm going to call it log. Okay. And it is going to take an exception. All right.
Okay.
And it's also going to take an iLogger for right now, but it'll move into the iLogger, and that parameter will go away when we make this PR. And what this is now going to do is I'm just going to take that logger and I'm just going to do pretty much this message right here. And I'm going to put this in place here. And now it looks like I'm going to want to take this and make this a string. Now we'll leave that as is for right now. And here, this is now just going to be E. And then I am going to return, here I'm going to return true because of how you've implemented this. So I'm going to call this one log and swallow. Okay.
All right. So we're swallowing the exception. We're not letting it get out.
Right.
All right.
And I say that instead of log ex, I'm going to say when log and swallow. And I'm going to take it, pass it in my logger, and the exception.
I think you need ex, right? Because that's the exception variable caught.
Right. And then we don't need this. Okay? So now what this is an exception filter. Okay? And I've written one that always returns true. So we're going to log the exception. We're going to do that work that's inside that method. Then we're going to return true, which says, yep, I handled this exception. Okay?
Ah, okay.
And now I could write a similar one here where I am going to say log and rethrow. And that one is going to return false. Okay?
Oh, all right. I see where you're going.
And now up here, now if I said log and rethrow, up here,
yep,
what would happen is now I'm going to log that message, and then I'm going to throw the exception to let that pass through the call stack. Okay?
Okay.
Now, the reason these are interesting and worthwhile methods is twofold. One is that an exception filter doesn't actually unwind the call stack. Okay, so if I look at something, execute this code to write the log message, and then decide I'm going to throw the error anyway because I can't really do anything with it, then the original call stack is preserved in any debugging traces if you're using IntelliTrace or any of those tools.
Okay.
What happened.
So the when is a filter that says, catch this exception, right? We're going to process this exception object when this value returns true.
Correct.
And you're always returning true.
Right.
So
because you wanted to swallow that exception. Yep.
Right. So it's well, wait. If it's true, then it's going to do nothing here. If it's false, then it's going to pass through. It'll fall through, and there's nothing.
Continue. Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Now, where this gets really interesting is I can take this log and rethrow, and I could put it on one of these here. I can catch the timer out exception, and I could even do something here where I could say catch exception E when log and rethrow Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
even though the exception is a more general kind of exception, I can still put that above the timeout exception as long as I know my filter is going to return false and say, yeah, I only logged this. I didn't actually do anything.
So, to be clear for folks that are just seeing this, the catches are evaluated top to bottom, and the first one that it matches, starting from the top and going to the bottom, is the one that it'll execute. And like you were saying, this less specific exception, okay, we'll decide whether or not to rethrow here.
Right. Right.
Okay. So that's a very interesting trick I hadn't thought of.
And that's one that I really like with that particular idiom is with exception filters.
Yeah.
And then here's one last one that I won't put in your in your PR.
PR is a pull request.
Right.
And yes, Brave Cobra, Fritzbot and Nightbot both know how to answer the GitHub question. Ooh. Oh, this is a good... That's a... Go ahead.
I like what you're doing here. Namespace here. It's I believe it is... I've got the wrong property. It's system.diagnostics.debugger.
I think so.
Is attached.
Yeah, look at that.
Okay, so now what's going to happen here, if I think this code might be doing something bad and I want to check it in a debugger, if I add this particular guard clause, now your timeout exception will only be caught if I don't have a debugger attached. Okay.
If I don't have a debugger attached, so when it's running in
Running
production.
right,
yeah.
Or even if it's just running Control F5 from Visual Studio. If I F5 in Visual Studio and I have a debugger attached, this won't get caught. You'll get an exception not caught exception, and the debugger will trap it and say, this thing threw an exception that wasn't caught, and it'll catch you right there. So if you think something might be the exception that's getting thrown and you're having trouble finding it, this trick is a good one just to put that in place and go, okay, let's just see if this is where this weird exception I don't often see happens.
Okay.
Just run in the debugger and see if it breaks there.
Very cool. I can definitely see places where I would use that, especially when we're... look at this. We've got some trolls that have come into the chat room. Wonderful.
Oh, dear.
Wow. And they're coming faster than... Can I get some help here from some of our mods that are in the chat room with banning some of these folks? Yeah.
The price of popularity, sir.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh. Yep, I think we're going to have to set that... Well, even if I set it to follower mode, they're generating follows here. It is a chat DDoS. Makes it hard to ban them all. Okay. I completely agree. This is a pain. And I'm sorry that folks are running into this. And I'm also going to turn on slow mode. So that yeah, we've got some folks over on Reddit that are just hammering us right now. Thanks so much. Yep, I turned it on to follower mode with time. So, sorry about that.
Well, the timing is such that maybe you get a quick break here and...
Yeah, my gosh.
I finished this, and...
And actually, this is going to lead right into our next hour here with Sarah Ford, talking about how to save this stuff that we've learned, how to put stuff into Git, and take advantage of GitHub and some of those services that we have out there.
All right. And cool. I will get you a PR for this later. And
very cool.
Do a PR on your Twitch stream with some of the links of areas that we looked at. And if anyone has any questions later, Bill Wagner on Twitter, and I am happy to answer any of the questions.
Very cool. Thanks so much.
All righty, thank you.
Very helpful. And I'm going to go try and head off this little bit of trolling that we have going on. All righty, Bill. I'll catch you later.
All righty, thank you, Jeff.
See ya.
Yep.
All
Bye.
right.